In a world where noise drowns out impact, true change is built quietly. The Better India celebrated those transforming lives with courage and commitment. As India marches towards Viksit Bharat at 2047, CSR emerges as a true catalyst of change. Join us for a thought-provoking panel on its pivotal role in shaping the nation's future.
Viksit Bharat 2047 is more than just numbers. It's about dignity and opportunity for every Yuva, Garib, Mahila and Annadata. Big change often starts small. A teacher opening a library, a farmer saving water, a woman breaking barriers and a youth innovating for his village. The question is, how do we help these sparks grow into larger movements? And what role can corporates play? Hello and welcome to this special edition. I'm Shreya Upadhyay and it is my pleasure to introduce our panel of guests for this special discussion. We have with us Mr. Dhimant Parekh, founder, The Better India, Ms. Uma Ratnam Krishnan, MD, Optum India, and Ms. Jyoti Sharma, CEO, NASSCOM Foundation. Dhimant, can I first begin by asking you, you have seen one person's courage, change, bring in change and an impactful change. Can you give us examples such as these, where a small idea has sparked a larger impact?
At The Better India, we are constantly reporting stories of individuals going out there and making very large-scale impact. A very recent story we covered is of a man named Chetan Pardeshi. He's in Maharashtra. And, he saw this whole state of lack of access of books to government schools. It's just, I'm not talking about curriculum books, but just reading, which you and I get access to. And he single-handedly started a movement, putting a mobile library together by donated books. So just a community movement, donated books, does a whole round, and today 150 schools are covered by just this mobile library. 50 books is all it took. Now we have 150 schools, and thousands of students getting access to it. And I'm talking about the power of actually just one to think about it. Of course, there are people who kind of enable this to happen. So, this is an example where we can clearly see there is a lot of agency, there is a lot of will. All it needs is not even a lot of resources, right? The idea and the will is starting to create this change. And which is where I believe that even with the smallest of interventions, imagine the kind of scale we can achieve when you have these kind of initiatives happening. I mean, this is just one, but there are like hundreds that we report every month.
Uma Ratnam Krishnan, Optum India calls its CSR a force for good. In India, for India. Now, understanding these challenges as, has been talked about, how Optum is meaningfully touching lives beyond funding. Can you help elaborate on that?
In Optum India, we actually clearly work with specific priorities in mind. Let me give you a couple of examples and how we've actually made a difference at a much wider scale. So our CSR program focuses on 4 pillars: health access, skill development, capacity building, and environmental sustainability. And our approach is to actually touch as many lives directly and indirectly as we can. We've actually touched about 422,000 lives directly and about 1 million indirectly. And going back to how we can actually help scale, right? How we can make impact at larger levels. I think the digital platform and technology make a huge difference. I'll give you one more example. We partner with a NGO called Arman, right? And Arman, using a digital platform and technology, their mobile academy as well as Skillkari, they've actually managed to touch and train over 500,000 pregnant women, right? And additionally, they've also trained 5,000 ASHA workers. Now, all of this is how to use technology to actually scale. There's another organization we work with called ECHO, who's actually trained over 1,000 nurses using a telementoring approach. And they've actually trained 1,000 nurses on breast and cervical cancer. So there are many ways in which corporates can actually help scale using technology and digital platforms. 2 other things I'll call out, where we've actually helped to make a difference and how we can help scale. One of them is that to make sure that we have real impact, we need to make sure that we can actually replicate, and replication needs capacity building. We need to work with organizations that can monitor, understand impact, assess impact. So we work quite closely with many organizations to help build that capacity. And the other thing is, I think, calling ourselves a force for good, we really mean that, and how, is actually using the corporate talent workforce as a force for good. We spend a lot of time and effort in helping convert our corporate talent into a force for good by using them as mentors, as trainers, as volunteers, to actually go and help organizations with their operations, with their data, with their technology. And we have a program called GIVE, which is Geographically Inclusive Volunteer Events. And we've spent thousands of hours actually with our employees volunteering to make a real difference to healthcare access.
Jyoti, can I understand from you, India has seen 34,909 crore rupees spent on CSR in fiscal year 23-24, yet many change makers still remain hyperlocal, unable to scale beyond their villages or districts. From your vantage point at NASSCOM Foundation, what systemic gaps do you think are preventing these change makers from scaling, and how can we bridge these gaps?
Absolutely, and here I would say it's not about the money, it's about the ecosystem. I believe if corporates can build, bring in tech, talent and trust amongst change makers, I think it will really change the entire game. And especially if you align that with national development goals, I think that's where you hit the nail on the head, and that's where change makers are then elevated to making transformative change at scale. Now, I do want to say that why then change is not happening, why then there's this paradox.
Yeah.
Firstly, CSR funds are short term. It's from 1 year to another. We, NASSCOM Foundation, have been working for Tech for Good for 25 years. Even today, I can only boast of a handful of CSR donors who have been working with us, who give us multi-year funding. So that is the fact that it's short term, so you can't talk about impact, you can only talk about outreach. The second thing is, the CSR fund, even in our report, is very disproportionate in just 4 states, largely in South and West India. You wonder why. Then you have this whole thing happening where the Central India, East India, Northeast India is kind of neglected. There's really nothing that reaches there. You can't talk about Viksit Bharat if you do not look at that layer. This bottom 10% is what's really pulling down your national development goals. So somewhere, even in our report, we absolutely appeal to CSR corporates that, let's look over and above and beyond your backyard. Let's look at where we really need to make the change in the rural areas, in the rural communities. And these are some of the things where you have amazing change makers.
Yeah.
They need technology, they need scale, and they need the CSR corporates to be invested in the national development goals.
That's right. Absolutely. And change makers often have the ideas and the passion, but what they lack is perhaps scale. And this is something that we have been talking about. How can corporates become true partners in that journey, helping them move from solving problems for 100 people to solving them for 1 million? Hemant, would you like to explain to us how these ideas and passions are then converted into helping millions of people, not just a few hundred?
See, the first barrier to scale anything is to know what's working on the ground, right? So the biggest first step to take is that of awareness. Firstly, we need enough awareness on what are the solutions that are working on the ground. I think that's the core base. The second part is that we as corporates, right, we need to be clear that the solutions are not going to emerge from our corporate boardrooms. The solutions are there. All that is needed is for us to get in and eliminate roadblocks that exist at the grassroots level for these people to kind of, scale up. It reminds me of a very interesting story recently. There is a lady, Mamta Devi in Muzaffarpur in UP, and she had a mobility issue, but had a great idea of making ice creams. And then there's an agency called Development Alternatives who came in and, gave an e-rickshaw, solved for mobility. Women were able to move. And today, the ice cream brand called Amrita Ice Creams, named after her daughter, is one of the most sold ice cream in that district.
How lovely.
You know, and all it took was that one intervention. It wasn't even capital, right? It's just such a small intervention. So to me, I don't think the onus on solutions, how are we going to scale, should be taken by corporates. I think the solutions are there because they are the ones who live and breathe the problems every single day. We just need to figure out how do we intervene and remove what roadblocks exist, because agency is very high. And today we can clearly see that entrepreneurship is not only visible, it's become more local. People are saying, we will take the resources available at our disposal, we will solve our problems. But we're not going to wait for being beneficiaries and for development to be brought to us, which I think is a great move, mindset shift that has happened. And I think that's the angle that we really need to bring the new lens on CSR, saying that this is how we'll be able to kind of help scale. Scalability solutions are not with us, they're there. We just need to go there and apply our sort of frameworks to eliminate roadblocks.
Can I quickly, Dhiman, then I also understand from you, Uma mentioned tech and how the digital platforms are really helping in all of this. Do you also see that aiding change makers in what they want to do? Because obviously through digital platforms, you're reaching more people.
Absolutely. I mean, I think today's world, everyone is using all your digital media platforms. I mean, it's the easiest tools that are available for people to talk about what they're doing, for mobilizing people. That's something inherently part of every solution that we are seeing that's coming out there, right? We're not talking about advanced technologies in say, rural communities, but we are seeing advanced communities in cases like in Haryana. There's a story of a young girl who figured out drones and how to use them and helped her farmer father to use it to drop seeds. And that became so popular that she now has about 500 farmers in the district coming to her and kind of doing it. And so, here we're thinking, what's going to be the future of tech and all of that. And here you have in our farms, solutions are kind of emerging. So technology is intrinsic. I think we're seeing some fantastic work happening. We just need to there are these sparks. We just need to figure out how we're going to scale these up.
If I may just add on and build on further to what my colleagues have said over here. See, CSR is indeed a true partner in all of this Viksit Bharat. But like you rightly said just before me, that it is the local solution. So what CSR has to do, corporates have to do, is actually co-create. Co-create with the communities, co-create with the government, co-create with organizations like NASSCOM Foundation, the not-for-profits. And CSR giving, once it's aligned with the local needs, as you rightly said, and government programs, CSR, and then also looks forward into more long-term investment and capacity building, then definitely, this whole amalgamation of, support really transforms to something that we are looking to see together with the government in 2047. So definitely the thing that will bring about change is that investing in, building the local capacity. I can give you so many more examples to add on to yours. Like, for example, one of the social startups that we work to build, it's called Save Mom. It's pretty much like your iPhone watch. It's a device that you put on. Pregnant women can wear it, and it's a real-life tracking to see early, risk pregnancies, And we invested in that social startup, and today that startup is actually reaching out to working with public health centers, the PHCs in rural areas. That's how you reach scale. That's how you use technology, and it's very intrinsic. The key takeaway here is when you co-create for a local problem with the right kind of funding, and it's not short term, you can definitely bring scale and accountability with tech, data, and building capacities where you need to.
Uma, at Optum India, how do you then think that corporates can become partners in their true journey, which was something that we have been focusing on, how corporates can help and how this change can go about in the country, also change makers getting their recognition and spreading the impact further?
I've heard a lot of local solutions. To me, I think this is about localized solutions, but the ability to actually create ownership for the local solution, because impact actually happens when you create that ownership. Now, how do you create that ownership? You either, you create the resources there, you create the capacity there, you get the local leaders involved. And that is something that the corporates can actually help do to support the change makers. And interestingly, the change makers, the ideas are there, like Dhiman said, right? What they don't need is just funding. What they need is belief, partnership, and helping them spread their work. And in terms of moving from a local to a much more national impact, right? That to me is really around taking something that works, but replicating it somewhere else, but with the right local context. You can't just, one size fits all doesn't work here, right? So how do you actually make it work? You need to take into account the local community dynamics, the local cultural nuances and all of that. And the corporates can actually help with some of that as well to help the change makers move this forward. I think the mission of Viksit Bharat is deeply inspiring. Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is, both of the pillars on which we are driving some of our initiatives. I think the government can also work along with the corporates, which they're doing. It's kind of creating the foundation for amplifying the impact of CSR initiatives. And I think CSR is no longer for corporates. It's not just project funding. It's not just transactional giving, right? It's a transformational, and it's to be looked at as a strategic engine for change. And that's how I think corporates need to approach it for wider impact.
So, viewers, from stories to movements, that's the shift that corporates can lead, which brings us to the bigger question: how does all this align with the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047? Now, the government has set this vision that by 2047, India will be a developed nation. But remember, this isn't just about GDP. It's about dignity. It's about opportunity for every Yuva, Garib, Mahila, as well as Annadata. Now, how can the government and corporations work together in this mission? That, ladies and gentlemen, is the bigger question. Dhiman, you want to come in on this? How can the two work together? We've been talking about it, but as far as concrete solutions are concerned, how can we proceed with that?
Look, I think there's no doubt that these are the two largest stakeholders in order to create impact, right? I truly believe that the true economic growth will happen if we put entrepreneurs, change makers at the center of our growth story, not as an afterthought, right? If we start truly believing that the large next growth stories are going to emerge not from our corporate boardrooms, but from our villages, from our classrooms, from our communities, from our farms. I think that's when you're going to see a lot more alignment come in, because I think first step is the belief that this is where it's going to emerge from, and not only from corporate India. So that's the first part. The second part is that in order to kind of really meet the goals that you've said, there has to be a collective action, not just from corporate government, but also from the citizens at large, right? And so how do we sensitize citizens towards, not everyone's a change maker, right? There are lots of day-to-day challenges. So how do we sensitize everyone? And that's where, highlighting the work that Optum India is doing, the work that NASSCOM Foundation is doing, the stories that we are reporting. I think we are all kind of working towards driving that collective action. It's a very interesting line that the Honorable Prime Minister sent us as a congratulatory message for the Better India Showcase event that we're doing, where he said that when 140 crore people and everyone takes a single step, it's effectively 140 crore steps that have moved forward. I think while we have the vision, the alignment of getting all the stakeholders moving in the right direction will truly be the transformation. And for that, we just need to have that focus very clear, that this is where the next growth stories are going to come from.
Uma?
So I think a couple of things from me, right? One is the government's vision is deeply inspiring. They've set the foundation, right? I think what is really important for maximizing and amplifying impact, I'll call out a couple of things. One is the entire public-private collaboration. How do we create that framework for public-private collaboration? Now, CSR rules over a period of time have started evolving. The Companies Act requirements have changed. CSR requirements have changed as well. But I think one thing is very clear. We've moved away from just compliance to actually saying impact. And you can see that really clearly, right? I mean, of the top 100 listed companies, more than 50% of them are spending more than their 2%. So it's no longer about compliance. It's about actually creating impact.
Yeah.
And I think for unlocking that full impact, that public-private partnership is really important. And I think the government could also start thinking about outcome-linked models for CSR, which is rather than just funding a project or doing one thing, to say, how do we incentivize CSR and go towards a CSR model, which will actually incentivize outcomes. Early days, but it's a good thing to think about. Right? At Optum, I think we align a lot of our CSR efforts towards our national priorities. Clearly, healthcare is a big one. There's another interesting example of a public-private partnership. We partnered with IIM Gurgaon, and we're actually managing the Sikandarpur forest area for environment and sustainability, and I think it's a great example of public-private partnership. Yeah. Small one, but it's a start.
And
right?
much needed.
Yeah, much needed, public health, environment. So let's see, we're excited about that opportunity. So I think the government has set the vision, which is fantastic, but I think it'll take all of us, civil society, corporates, community, NGOs, to partner together to actually make Viksit Bharat a lived reality.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that, look, here is a country which is so vibrant in its diversity. We've got, different languages, cultures, people, habits all coming together. While that may have its challenges, Jyoti, it also gives us that motivation, that encouragement to bring about change, which is very customized. We were talking about this, that you need to consider the fact that there are different cultures existing in this particular country and you work as per them, isn't it?
Yeah. And we talk about wider impact, and when we talk about the country as a whole, and when you talk about Viksit Bharat, we're definitely not talking about just GDP, right?
Yeah.
It's about the people that make it. It's about inclusive growth, and it's about really development of the entire, the diversity that we have.
Yes.
So I think that's why we believe, like it's been said before, that it's the partnership with the government, the corporates, and the communities and organizations like for not-for-profits that can really stitch everything together and take us forward on that.
Viewers, every act of change begins with one person. But with the strength of corporate India behind them, one can become many and small ideas can become movements. And it is the bridge to Viksit Bharat 2047, where every Yuva, Garib, Mahila and Annadata has the chance to rise. We wrap up the special edition here. Thank you very much to all my panelists for joining us and sharing your perspective. Viewers, thank you very much for joining us as well. Bye-bye.